Hi, it's Jason. Today I'm going to read from Floki's Army, Chapter 1, Puppies. It was a beautiful Saturday and the sun was out. The pickup's windows were rolled down and the dust from the road was coming in, but it didn't matter. Her uncle picked her up and was taking her to his farm to see the new puppies. It wasn't really a farm like you would imagine, but that's what everybody in the family called it. To her, it seemed like everybody in Tennessee was a farmer, especially in Claiborne County. She always wanted to see his farm because he had lots and lots of dogs. They said he sold puppies to people all over. It was his business. This was the first time she was ever allowed to go to the farm. She was now 13. Uncle Ned said that she was old enough now, and maybe he could give her a job at the farm part-time if she wanted. She didn't care about that right now. All she wanted to see were the puppies. Uncle Ned said that they were a breed called Shih Tzu. She had never heard of them before. Supposedly they were very small and covered with long fur like a stuffed animal. Everyone around here had a dog, but they were usually big hunting or herding dogs. This should be fun. Uncle Ned lived all the way at the end of Nowhere Road. She lived in a rural area, but this was really in the sticks. As Uncle Ned pulled into the driveway, he parked next to his house. His house was at the front of his property, and he had a barn and a couple of large sheds in the back, well off the road. He said that when the puppies were first born, he brought them up to the house and put them in a little shed by the back door. He said this was so they could be kept a close eye on, the newborns. She thought she heard him saying something else, but she wasn't listening anymore. All she wanted was to see the puppies. They went to the shed and the door was open. There they were with their mother, 5 little squirmy pups. They were all different variations of black and white. They didn't have long fur yet as promised, but they were the most beautiful creatures she had ever seen. There were 3 boys and 2 girls, so small they fit in the palm of her hand. After about 15 minutes, Uncle Ned said it was time for them to rest, and he asked her if she was hungry. He made her a sandwich and complimented her on how she handled the puppies. Then he asked her if she would like to help him out at the farm from time to time. He could pay her $5 an hour. She knew that her parents had mentioned to a few people that she was looking for a part-time job, so that she could have some money of her own. She was at an age where she wanted things like her friends had, and having her own money was the only way that could happen. She said yes, of course, and asked when she could start. Ned said that since she was still in school, he would start her just on Saturday for 4 hours in the morning. That would be $20 per weekend, $80 per month. She jumped at the offer and agreed to come back next Saturday at 8 a.m. Her parents would have to drive her. Next Saturday finally came, and it was time to go to work. That sounded so grown up. She was running a little bit late, and her parents were waiting in the car for her. They both seemed in a bad mood. Was it because they had to wait for her? No, this was something more like they were mad at each other. They must have had an argument before she got there. Oh well, she was going to take care of puppies. They could sort it out later, after they dropped her off. After driving down that long dirt road, they finally arrived at Uncle Ned's house. For some reason, her dad didn't pull into the driveway and just said, "Have a good day." She got out, closed the car door, and ran up the driveway to Uncle Ned's back door to see the puppies. Oddly, the puppies weren't there anymore. Ned came to the back door and asked if she was ready. "I am," she said. "Where are the puppies?" "They're in the back in the shed that we use for all the puppies and their mothers." "You mean there are more puppies?" she asked. He said, "Yes. We always have puppies here until they get old enough to be sold. I can't make any money if I don't sell a lot of puppies." Now, before we get started, I'll just let you know that this work is hard and it's a little dirty. Some of the things we do you may not understand, but just remember, we're running a business here. She didn't really know what that meant, But whatever it was, she'd be fine. After all, there were puppies. She didn't pay attention at first, but now she noticed that there was always a lot of dogs barking. A lot of dogs. As she and her uncle got closer to the barn, the barking got louder. As they entered the barn, the sound of the barking was almost deafening. It was accompanied by an overwhelming smell of dog poop and hundreds of flies. He did say that the job would be hard and dirty. He didn't mention this. As she looked at her uncle, she realized he didn't even notice the sound or the smell, or the fly on his nose. She guessed that he'd been doing it so long that he didn't notice anymore. Maybe it wasn't that bad, and she would get used to it. Sure. After all, it was her first day. What did she know? Her uncle told her that he would start her out slowly, and eventually she would know how everything was done around here. Her first job was to feed the dogs. She was just to get dry food from this enormous bin and put a scoop in for each dog. Some dogs were alone in tiny cages, and some were grouped with a few others in slightly larger cages. Not every dog had its own bowl, so if there were 4 dogs in a cage and 1 bowl, she would put 4 scoops in that bowl. 1 scoop per dog. No more. All the bowls were filthy, so she found a spigot and started rinsing them the best that she could. When her uncle saw her, he told her that she didn't have time for that. He said he was only paying her for 4 hours, and there were over 150 dogs on the property. "I'm running a business here." She did as he said. Just before her 4 hours were up, a man came into the barn. He was pretty rough looking. He wore a shirt with the sleeves cut off, exposing a lot of tattoos, and he had one of those wallets that was too big for his back pocket, with a chain connecting it to his belt. Her dad told her that those guys never had any money anyway. She said hello, but he just stared. Finally he said, "So you're his niece?" "Yes, I just started helping out today." "Well, you're taking away from my hours, little girl." "Oh," she said, "Uncle Ned said that there was plenty of work to be done around here." "Well, just don't get in my way." It wasn't in her nature to be scared easily. Some may have described her as bold, but something about this guy creeped her out. She didn't even want to know his name, and she would be sure to stay out of his way. But not because he said so, just because she didn't like him. Okay, her 4 hours were up. She went up to the house to tell Uncle Ned that she was finished. He said that she did a good job for a beginner, and here's a $20 bill. "Thank you, Uncle Ned. I didn't see the puppies, though. Can I go look for them before you take me home?" "Sure," he replied. "But we have to go in 10 minutes. They are in a smaller shed to the left, 3rd litter to the left. You want to look at them all, but I don't have time for that." So she went to the shed, and as he said, there were 6 litters, but she couldn't look at all of them. Ah, there they were. They were already bigger than they had been a week before, and their fur was already growing. There was one little boy who had to fight his way up to his mother's nipple for milk. He was so determined and cute. He was a little fighter. "Okay," she told them, "I'll be back next week." Then she ran out and jumped into her uncle's already running pickup truck. Of course, when she got home, she told her parents about her day. They tried to be happy for her because they knew that she wanted to have some money for herself, and right now they couldn't afford to give her anything extra. Her father reminded her that this was her first job, and they will get better. This was the only thing available for a 13-year-old girl. The next Saturday, she was ready for work on time and couldn't wait to get there. Her uncle was in the house doing paperwork on the kitchen table. He said hello and asked her if she remembered what to do and if she remembered where everything was. "Of course," she said. When she got to the big barn, creepy guy was already there. She said hello, but he just gave her a quick glance. She decided that was hello for him. He was cleaning the poop from the cages. She couldn't figure out how these dogs could poop so much. They didn't seem to get all that much to eat. Feeling bold as she often did, she decided to ask Creepy Guy, that was now his name, about the poop. "Hey, I was wondering, how come these dogs poop so much? Sure seems like a lot of poop for one day." "That's because it isn't from one day," he said. "I clean their poop on Saturdays, and I feed them every 3 days. Ned doesn't pay me to be here every day. That's why there's so much poop, little lady." She knew he must be wrong. He didn't seem very smart anyway. Her uncle or someone else must do it on the other days. She just doesn't see them because she's only here on Saturdays. She fed all the dogs and filled the water bowls as she had been shown. She also cleaned the worst bowls while no one was looking. She was getting used to the barking. The poop smell was tolerable, sort of. But the flies, that's not happening. When she was done, she went to see the puppies. Those little Shih Tzus' fur grew even more. There was little Fighter exploring the cage without any fear. He and his brothers and sisters were just the best things ever. After that, she ran to the house and reported to her uncle. He looked up and smiled and handed her a $20 bill. "Uncle Ned," she asked, "who feeds and cleans the cages on the days when me and the other guy aren't here?" "There's no one else. We're running a business here." The next few Saturdays were pretty much the same. She was getting used to it, except for the poop smell and the flies. Her dad called them occupational hazards and seemed pretty amused every time he said it. On the 3rd or 4th week, she asked her uncle if she could take some of the dogs out for a walk in the fenced-in area. They seemed so cramped up. Maybe they would be happier if they got out a little bit. "You don't have to pay me." Her uncle seemed a little cross with her when he said, "We're not here to make them happy. We're running a business. I'll see you next Saturday." The following Saturday, when she greeted her uncle, he said, "Try to finish up early. I have something I want you to help me with." When she finished all her work, she found her uncle and asked what he needed help with. He said, "Come with me. Let's look at your favorite puppies." "Gladly," she responded. "Okay," her uncle said. "I need a woman's opinion. If you were looking for a puppy, which one of these would you choose and why? You must pick one of the males, okay?" "I do have a favorite," she admitted. "I call him Little Fighter," as she pointed. "Okay," he asked. "What is it you like about him?" "Well," she said, "he's little but he's strong and fearless." "What else?" he asked. "What about his looks? People pick dogs because of their looks, too." "Well," she said, "I've noticed that his markings are quite distinctive, and they are perfectly even on each side of his body compared to his brothers and sisters." "Very good," said her uncle. "He is the one that I would have chosen, and for the same reasons. You're quite a bright young lady." She had a smile from ear to ear. Not once on this day did her uncle say, "We're running a business." She felt like things were going to change. The following Saturday, she had a little extra enthusiasm going to work. Maybe her uncle would listen to some of her other ideas. She was able to get to the farm a little early and decided to visit with the puppies for a little while before she started. When she went into the puppy shed, she couldn't find them. Why had her uncle moved them? She didn't have time to find them now, so she would have to ask her uncle when she was done. As soon as she finished, she went straight to the house to find her uncle. "Hi, Uncle Ned." "Hey, where did you put the puppies?" "I sold the puppies, and for a good price, too. Thanks to your advice, I will make even more money with the next litter." "What do you mean?" she asked. "Well, as you pointed out, that boy was the strongest and best looking of the bunch. We kept him here so he can be a stud when he gets older. His puppies will sell for more money because they're coloring and perfect markings." She knew what a stud was, but this was rural Tennessee. Everyone knew someone who raised livestock. "Well, where is he?" she questioned. "He's in the barn with the other adult dogs," her uncle replied. Then she blasted through the screen door and ran to the barn to find him. Finally she came upon him in a tiny cage, all alone. His brothers and sisters had been taken from him. He wasn't even with his mother anymore. He didn't seem to have that spark any longer that she had so admired about him. He had been a lot like her in some ways. Now he was just lying on the floor of his wire mesh cage. His eyes were open and he was looking at her, but there was no expression anymore. He didn't even have a blanket to keep him warm and comfortable. Now she was mad. She ran back to the house, yelling her uncle's name the whole way. "Why did you do that to him?" she asked. "Don't you raise your voice to me, young lady. Maybe you haven't been paying attention, but all the dogs are treated the same around here. They're just dogs. They're here to make me happy, not the other way around. I'm running a business here. Get that through your head. Now, take your $20 and get ready to go. I don't have any more time for this." She threw the 20 on the floor and said, "I'll get home on my own." She ran down the driveway as fast as she could, so that her uncle didn't see her crying. Then she started the long walk down that dusty road. She walked about a mile when her uncle pulled up alongside her in his pickup truck. "Get in," he said. "It will take you all day to get home." She knew he was right, so she jumped in the truck, not speaking a single word the whole ride home. "See you next Saturday," he said when they pulled into the driveway. She did not reply or even look at him. She just jumped out of his truck and ran to her front door and went in. Her mother was home, but her dad was out doing some extra work that he had contracted through a friend. She wanted to speak with both of her parents, but she needed to speak now before she exploded. "Mom," she said, "Uncle Ned is mean to his dogs, especially my favorite puppy. He doesn't seem to care at all." "Listen, honey," her mom said, "both your father and I were not crazy about you working at Ned's farm. We argued about it, but we also knew that that was the only way you were going to be able to make any money for yourself. As you know, your father's work has been slow, so we can't help as much as we would like. A lot of people around here are out of work. Your father and his brother Ned never agreed on how those dogs should be treated. But it's Ned's business, and he can run it any way he wants. I know that you're a little young to hear this, but you are smart and you are strong. Unfortunately, in life, we have to make choices, even when none of the options are good. We thought this was the best of all the poor choices that we had. Maybe we were wrong. You don't have to go back if you don't want to. I'll talk to Ned for you." She was still mad, but she wasn't going to let Uncle Ned discourage her. She would do the best that she could with the choices available to her, even if they weren't good ones. She could quit, but then what about the next uncomfortable situation? She would find a way to make it as comfortable as possible. She went back to work the next Saturday. No yelling, no questioning, no trouble. "Hi, Uncle Ned." "Young lady, I'll be in the back feeding the dogs, okay?" She went about her normal duties, but tried to add a little more kindness to each delivery of food. Just a nice hello to each and every dog. She was careful not to pet every dog, because a lot of them seemed so scared when she reached into their cages for their bowls. They didn't know that she was trying to help, and might think that they needed to protect themselves. The more often she fed them, the more at ease they seemed with her. When it came to Little Fighter, well, that was a different story. She had fallen in love with him and would pet him and scratch him behind his ears every time she would see him, and once again before she would leave for the day. When she was sure that her uncle wasn't around and Creepy Guy was busy, you never could tell with him, sometimes he would just appear out of nowhere. Part of what made him so creepy. She would let Little Fighter out on the ground, and he would stretch his legs and run around a little bit. His spirit had returned, at least when she was around. Her job was now becoming routine. She kept learning new things, but her primary responsibility was feeding. She got much faster at it, so she had time to quickly clean the water bowls, or at least clean the worst ones. What the difference was now was that she noticed how poorly all the dogs looked. Before, maybe it was the excitement of her job, or maybe it was her underlying optimism that wouldn't allow her to see what was right in front of her. Sometimes she just wanted to leave, but then the dogs would never see a kind face at all. As little as she was able to give them, she still felt that it had to help somehow. Of course, she was still smitten with little Fighter. She would always have time to pet him and talk to him and slip him a few nuggets of food that she put in her pocket for him. She wouldn't put extra in his bowl because if Uncle Ned or Creepy Guy were to notice, she would be in trouble. Little Fighter was growing, and so was his fur. She wished she could give him a bath because the poop that was left in the cage all week was getting stuck in his fur. His cage was so small that he could barely turn around, and even though he had grown some, his tiny feet would slip through the wire mesh at the bottom of the cage, and he would get stuck. Sometimes he would be that way when she came in on Saturday. How long had he been like that? Surely Uncle Ned would get him out if he saw him like that. But then again, she had no idea how often he went back to the barn, if ever. She was willing to bet that Creepy Guy would just think it was funny. The stories were that he had been in prison before this. Uncle Ned knew his parents, but they were dead now, and Ned felt responsible for him for some reason. Otherwise, why did Uncle Ned keep him around? For the most part, her job became routine. She knew what to expect every week. Her hours never increased because as she got older, she had more activities. Some were with school, and some were just with her friends. Her parents wanted to be sure that she didn't miss her childhood just because money was tight. Uncle Ned didn't mind if she took some Saturdays off. He was really just trying to help. Plus, he liked having her around, despite her fiery personality. End of Chapter 1. Thank you.